What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the VYPEU Podcast, brought to you by the VYPEU Ambassadors. I'm Robert Gonsolin, along here with
Tinley
and Will Turbo.
And today, this is our first podcast. We'll be covering sports in the state of Texas. We're just going to go over some games from last night just to start things off.
So let's talk about it. So we had one of the biggest games last week. It was past Thursday. It was North Shore versus Klein. Ended up being 30-23, North Shore winning. Honestly, kind of a shock because Klein held their own up until the late third quarter, and this also marks North Shore's 17th consecutive win this season. Not this season, but overall.
Wow, and then last night we also had Fort Bend Marshall. They took a loss to Longview out in Dallas.
Yeah, Longview started out the season with a pretty bad loss. They had a crazy amount of regular season wins in a row. And Marshall is also, one of the big 5A teams in the state. So this was probably the best game that we'll see in all of 5A this year. But Longview just dominated, 53-21. Markevian Haynes had 19 carries, 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they had another running back that also had 2 touchdowns. That was Caden Meredith, who had 16 carries for 121 yards.
Wow, and I heard that Longview wasn't the only team from Dallas playing in the big game. We also had Dallas Jesuit play against Rockwall. Is that right?
Yeah, Rockwall went really far last year. They were a 6A D1 semifinalist, and they came out last night against Dallas Jesuit. Final score 60-38. Their quarterback, Braden Locke, went 18 for 29 with 283 yards and 5 touchdowns. They ended up bringing in another quarterback, I believe it was a sophomore, who came in and got a touchdown. And then they also had their running back, Zach Hernandez, 11 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown. But Rockwall's got a tough schedule ahead of them. Next week, they'll be playing South Lake Carroll, whose quarterback is Quinn Ewers. He is the top recruit in all of the nation for the class of 2022. And then the week after that, they have Highland Park, who was supposed to go against Westlake just a few weeks ago, but because of the current situation with COVID-19, they weren't able to get that game.
Definitely we'll be keeping our eyes out for these next 2 games coming up. Let's go over to back to Houston and in the Beaumont area. We had Westbrook playing Tomball Memorial in an absolute shootout last night. Tomball Memorial outlasted Westbrook by a score of 66-63. Memorial's quarterback, Colton Marwell, threw for 329 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 75-yard pass. He had quite the field day. Marwell is committed to Colorado School of Mines, but he was not the only star on the field last night. Junior Richard Rodriguez scored 24 of Memorial's 66 points for the Wildcats. And as for Westbrook, they become 1-1, while Tomball Memorial becomes 2-0. Memorial will face off against Deer Park next week, who is 0-2. Shouldn't be too tough of a matchup for them. But we do have something interesting coming up. In Westbrook's next game, in about a week from now, they play Longview, which is a rematch of the 2018 6A Division II state finals. In this matchup, Longview did defeat Westbrook by a score of 35-34 in a very close game. Now, Tinley, can you shift it over to private schools and talk about Episcopal?
Yeah, so Episcopal, coming from a win of 27-12 against Legacy, they ended up playing Angleton this week. Took the loss. It was 21-10. They were up in the first half 10-0. They felt really confident about themselves. But Angleton ultimately, in the second half, switched it up, stepped up their game big time, and took the dub this week.
And how about on the other side of town in Houston for these private schools? We had Strake Jesuit playing C.E. King.
Yeah, Strake Jesuit had a little bit of a disadvantage here just because C.E. King got to play last week. They just dominated Cy Falls. I believe the score is 55-3. And Strake Jesuit just didn't look that great out there. Cameron Kinchin, who was the quarterback for the Panthers, he's got a 4.82 GPA. He was playing great out there. He reminds me of Lamar Jackson. They run a lot of RPO plays in that offense. He had 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, something I called this game last night, and something that I thought was really interesting is that they kind of switched up the run game after the first half. In the first half, they had Wembley, who was, no one could guard him. And then they decided, they were up going into halftime, and they decided to give some more carries to their junior Hammond. So those guys combined for 217 yards and 3 touchdowns. But let's give it up to the guys at Strike Jesuit. We have a new quarterback in Connor O'Hara, and the son of the former Texans general manager, Robert Smith, had 2 touchdowns. He looks like he's going to be the best wide receiver for the Crusaders this year.
And not only those 2 players, but the Crusaders also have some more weapons on their offense this year, including junior tight end Thomas Jewett, sophomore tight end Chico Holt, and senior tight end Jack Shanklin. We also have junior receiver Leland Smith, who caught a 20-yard pass yesterday and almost took it to the house. And Holden Maples, who's also been showing to have some very sticky hands out there.
Yeah, and props to Joel Crawford. Really carried the offense all night. No one could stop him. If that offensive line improves in the next few weeks, I think he's going to be just another one of those great Straight Jesuit running backs.
And I know that the chemistry for that offensive line is there. They've been playing with each other for 3 years, 4 seniors in the offensive line, 1 junior. It'll probably just take some getting used to, because a lot of these teams are just adapting to not having faced up against a real team since last season because of the coronavirus. But other than that, we shift over to District 19-6A, where we had Tompkins beating Clear Springs this afternoon by a score of 10-7. The Falcons were led by quarterback and Alabama commit Jalen Milrow, who was committed to UT, but as of a couple of weeks ago, just shifted over his commitment to Alabama. Over in the volleyball section, we had a couple big scores this week. We had Episcopal play Fort Bend Christian.
Yeah, so Episcopal ended up playing Fort Bend Christian's homeschool athletics team, and it hasn't been the prettiest start for their season, really. They've been 0-5 for quite some time, and this week they were going to play Duchesne and Fort Bend Christian. So they got 2 wins. I bet this is definitely making them feel super confident about themselves, including with this Fort Bend Christian game. It did honor their 10 seniors of their season.
Episcopal does have a lot of weapons on their volleyball team this year. I know they are reigning SBC champions, and they will be led by
probably it's their 6 committed starters at this point. They have commits ranging from Oklahoma University to Mississippi State, and the Woodard twins, who were once committed to A&M, but ultimately decided that they wanted to take their talent to Howard University.
Now, after beating Fort Bend Christian, they went on to also beat Duchesne, right?
Correct. Both games were swept in 3 sets. So now this makes the record 2-5. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about what's happening with St. Agnes?
St. Agnes volleyball, they didn't have the sharpest week recently. They took a 3-0 sweep in a loss against the Woodlands. The Woodlands is actually on a fire streak right now, 6-0. Might be a big volleyball team to look out for in the city of Houston or the greater Houston area. Now, a lot of football players, going back to football, a lot of players have began to commit a little bit. We have Donovan Jackson committed to
Ohio State.
And we have Cullen Montgomery committed to
the lovely Oklahoma University. And we're also still waiting for that one player from Episcopal's offensive line, Louis Chavaria, to commit. I mean, he has offers from Vanderbilt, I think Syracuse possibly, but so many offers. And he was supposed to commit around July 8th, and he's been pushing this deadline back. And I'm just so curious as to why this has been such a delay.
Yeah, hopefully he's just another athlete we can bring on here, and we can just hear his story and hear all about his hard work that he's been putting in, and hopefully we can find out or get some insight as to where he wants to go. Will, I heard someone from Strike Jesuit just committed to the University of Texas on the offensive line as well.
Yeah, Max Merrill, who is a guy that we hope to have on pretty soon on this show. He's been on the varsity squad for 3 years now. Just since the pandemic started, he's gotten a lot of offers. He got an offer from at least one school from each of Power 5 conferences. I know he also had offers from places like Army and Harvard and Yale. You see a lot of straight Jesuit guys. Yeah, they'll get offers from really nice academic schools like that. But UT gave him an offer on the beginning of a week, and he took it on a Friday. So when Coach Herman hits you up, you take that deal, and I don't blame him.
As for other 6A schools, we have Katie Taylor, who also has a solid offensive line. They have Hayden Connor committed to the University of Texas. Will hopefully play with Max Merrill on that line. And then there's Bryce Foster, who I believe is also committed to the University of Oklahoma, who will play with Colin Montgomery. So lots of big names in Houston from playing on the offensive line that we hope to see playing as teammates in the near future. And that's a wrap for today. We hope to dive into more next week, and hopefully we will be bringing Max Merrill, the University of Texas commit, on this podcast for a little Q&A. We're glad you could tune in today. I'm Robert Gonsolin, here with
Tinley
and Will Turboff. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you.